Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation. It's extremely pleasant to be here, and I've really enjoyed the previous talks. It's really just the first slide here that's so nice and colorful. The rest are really just bullet lists. But let's see if we can go through it. So my perspective is whether it's possible to use artificial intelligence in responsible gambling. And AI, artificial intelligence, is a discipline that's been in the field for a very long time. It's certainly used in, you could say, the entertainment of customers, but the question is, so you could say this is part of the problem. You can also ask if AI is part of the solution. And so my main claim is that, yes, it's certainly part of the solution, but we have to do it in a very educated way. We have to really think about what we are doing here. So in a nutshell, what artificial intelligence is doing, and you have probably seen all the pep talks around, you can basically take relatively complicated data like a picture, for instance, and then you can make a prediction or you can make a classification. It's basically what artificial intelligence can do. So when you have enough data, you can train it to basically perform these, let's say, manual tasks. And so the question is, if we were to transfer this to responsible gambling, what is it that we want to predict? What is it that we want to teach the AI essentially to do? And I'll claim that we are not really there yet, but there is some hope. Typically, what I see today is that what people are predicting is essentially self-exclusion. The problem, you could say, with predicting self-exclusion is that it is, as I've written up here, it's really only about 20% of self-defined problem gamblers who use self-exclusion. And then also the other way around, studies have shown that it's only a minority of people who self-exclude, who do it for the reason that they believe that they are becoming problem gamblers or they are at-risk gamblers. That doesn't mean that, we shouldn't be using self-exclusion. That's certainly a valuable tool, but it means that if we use this as the target, just as I showed you the cat before, so if we use it as a target for AI, then I don't believe that we'll get especially strong algorithms, because self-exclusion is really not a proxy marker for in responsible gambling. The same with self-assessment. Self-assessment is typically based on a verbal questionnaire. And this is pretty much like asking how much people drink. We all know what the right answer is, and that might be what you're getting. But again, for the purpose of AI, we don't really have a good target here. So the question is, can we do better? And that's basically what we're tasking ourselves with in Mindway. We have spent a lot of time in neuroimaging and behavioral studies, and what we're trying to do now is to carry these results into the practice of responsible gambling. So let me shift forward to this one, and I promise this is sort of the only real brain slides that you'll see here today. You're probably not counting on seeing this. But the message or the idea that I want to get across here is that what we can do sort of in the medical field is that we can train artificial intelligence to mimic what experts can do. So these are stroke patients coming in, they need acute medical treatment, and there might not always be a highly trained radiologist present who can read the images. So what we can do is essentially, when we show the AI machine here, when we show it enough examples of inputs and then expert assessment, then we can train the AI to essentially do the same. So we get, in a sense, a virtual radiologist. So now going back to responsible gambling, where we are today is that we are essentially looking at a database, and then we are, we have claimed a number of markers of harm, and we'll sort of say, if people score significantly on some of these markers of harm, then we have an at-risk player. But that might not be true. We also know exactly what is the combination here that we're looking for. I think what the previous speakers today have also shown that this is a kind of a highly complex area, and so it's not, hard and fast rules that we can apply. It also means that if we only look for sort of extreme behavior, then we are missing out on the customers who are on a trajectory to developing problem gambling behavior. So what we're doing instead is that we're actually asking a panel of experts, and these experts consist of psychologists, psychiatrists, medical doctors, researchers, and so on. So with the newest and the up-to-date knowledge about the combined risk markers that are known today. But instead of proclaiming what is correct for our population, we ask them to make a decision for individual customers. So imagine that we can do sort of an unbiased sample of customers for a particular operator. Now we give these experts access, and I cannot show you, of course, for GDPR reasons, what the real data looks like here, but we give them access to very fine-grained information about particular players. So imagine that we give them access not only to spin level, bets, but we also give them access to, gender, age, and so on, previous self-exclusion limits, affordability, and so on. So basically, every piece of information that's available for this customer. And then we ask the board of experts to come up with a consensus statement whether they see either existing or potentially coming signs of problem gambling behavior. So just as the radiologist is reading, images of brains and body, we believe that experts, who work with problem gamblers, who treat problem gamblers, are probably the best to look at this data and then come up with sort of a combined assessment. And here's why the AI then comes into it, because what the AI now can do, just like for radiologists, is that we can teach essentially a machine to do pretty much the same thing. And that means that the approach now becomes scalable. And here's one slide that I spent a lot of time on, because now imagine that we have sort of the knowledge of the experts in a machine here. That means that now we can basically track through a database in virtually real time. What we can also do now is that we can start to ask about the accuracy of the algorithm. And we have shown that, for instance, there's a 93% probability that when we detect possible problem gambling behavior with this tool, then there's a 93% probability that it is matched by the expert assessment. And then also the other way around, so what the experts find, we can also find. So, this is the first evidence that we're seeing that we can actually mimic the way that, trained experts, people who work and treat problem gamblers, that we can actually mimic that in a machine learning fashion. And of course, this can then be taken forward, because now we can use not only sort of the fine-grained and detailed knowledge that we get from the expert and basically from the expert assessment of the individuals, but we can also use that in combination with the AI to better communicate with the possible problem gambler. So that means that the operator has an opportunity here to have a much more informed approach to the customer, and that, in our experience, is something that resonates better with customers and better or helps facilitate a change in behavior. I'm almost out of time, but I want to show you just one extra thing here that we are working on here, because you can say that up until now we have more or less passively observed the gaming behavior, and there are others who do this, and so you can either use markers of harm or you can use AI. But the question here is if we can essentially also understand better the decision patterns of the potential customer here. And as I said in the beginning, the PDSI self-assessment is certainly one way of doing that, but the problem is that these are private questions, sort of intruding questions. It's not the kind of thing you essentially seek to be faced with when you go to, let's say, an online casino. And we also know that some of these questions are simply misunderstood and they are interpreted differently. So again, as a target for AI is probably not the best that we can do. We're suggesting instead that we make use of a game that's actually you've been living in the psychology, behavioral world for a long time. What this game essentially does is that it activates regions in the brain that are active during decision making. So we have a limbic system is a short story that generates cravings, and we have an executive function area that modulates whether we actually take action on the cravings that we have. And in between we have centers that sort of relay whether we should actually or inhibit whether we should actually be doing doing this. And so our proposal here is that if we engage customers in a game like this, and this is after all what customers are seeking when they go into an online casino, then we know on the one hand that we are activating these brain regions, we know what's going on, and that also means that we can, in a very educated fashion, give feedback to the customer. So we have now a much, much better understanding of the decision patterns of the customer. We have not asked anything where there would be, psychological barriers to reporting, but we can now educate the customer, we can compare to other customers and so on, but we can do it again in a very informed way. So this also forms naturally the basis of AI. So just to conclude, we can certainly use artificial intelligence in tracking customers. We can do that to essentially mimic the knowledge from experts. We can also use AI and neuroscience to get a better understanding of player behavior, and understanding that we wouldn't be able to get if we are just looking at the trajectories as they unfold on online betting sites. So that's my 10 cents. Thank you.